Welcome back everyone for another SnowRunner truck review. Today we're going to take a look at another one of Saber's paid DLC trucks released in the latter end of Season 6 around March 2022. So before we start, I ask that you please help support the channel by liking the video and subscribing to the channel as well. Alright, so without further ado, let's jump into this and check it out. Produced by one of the oldest manufacturers of Russian trucks, the ZIL-164 was a two-axle truck used for the Russian military and the civilian sector. At the time of production start, its predecessor, the ZIS-150, was discontinued. The 164 went through multiple changes in models from 1957 to 1965, and this allowed it to be used from military vehicles, dump trucks, or even fire trucks as well. This vehicle was widely used in the Soviet Union into the 70s, and some were still used in the early 90s. In SnowRunner, this vehicle is a Step 3364 Crocodile. The Step is another smaller off-road class 4x4 with similarities and differences, which we will get into here shortly. Although most of the time, 4x4s have some qualities that limit performance, the Croc seems to separate itself from the others, yet it does lack in some areas. Once again, another truck from prior games makes a return to this off-roading adventure. So before I get too far ahead of myself here, like usual, the base stats will be on your screen for your viewing, but let's jump right into the downsides list at the number 1 spot, small tires. So you're probably thinking those tires don't look small, and I would agree with you. Yet the tail of the tape would disagree with both of us. Unfortunately, the Croc's tires aren't that big, and those balloons that you do see on screen right now require a raised suspension upgrade, which isn't a big deal because there's no requirement to purchase this other than money. However, the fact remains that the Step's tires are the second smallest in its class, and a few Scouts have larger tires than the Croc as well. Regardless, I think it does quite well despite knowing this information. Downside number 2, weight and wheel spin. Being one of the lighter vehicles in the off-road class and a strong engine, we knew this downside would appear down the line on this list. The balloons don't help too much either due to the lack of the weight of the truck, yet the TMHS can still crawl through most things in low gear. So to mitigate this downside, have low gear ready when you see mud being flung everywhere. Downside number 3, lacking add-ons and durability. The Step is the only small off-road 4x4 to have a high saddle, but it doesn't really have many add-ons to support drivers' needs. This shouldn't be a huge surprise though, because naturally a smaller truck frame wouldn't be able to support larger add-ons usually that go on to 6x6 or larger trucks. And lastly, I wanted to briefly touch on how the Croc doesn't separate itself from the other 4x4s as far as durability is concerned. Downside number 4, spare tire and saddle troubles. This downside probably should have been my number 1 due to how frustrating it can be. I believe the origin of the troubles centers around the spare tire and overall frame contact. It is nice that the spare tire is above the vehicle's frame and away from the driving surface, but I'm afraid it causes more issues. Driving down trails with a saddled trailer, although feeling better to drive than the other 4x4s in its class and having good off-road clearance, I can't help but noticing trailers getting caught on terrain quite a bit. Then we come to the inability to steer when the command is initiated. There seems to be some contact with the frame of the truck and the spare tire. When the tire is taken away, this indeed removes most of the issue, but there's still something preventing smooth turning. This was first noticed on my co-op game with a friend, and then later during my own test as well. Downside number 5, small fuel tank. Keeping this downside very brief, the Crocodile's fuel tank is rather small as it stands. Having some add-ons to supplement this is quite nice to mitigate the lack of tank size here. Due to this truth, a maintenance or fuel add-on should be considered to cover this and also to help other vehicles in your fleet. And finally, to wrap up the downsides list at the number 6 spot, deceiving cargo space. Upon inspection, the step has a cargo bed that looks somewhat like it could carry 2 pieces of cargo. Psych. Sorry, it can only carry 1. I found this one to be a huge letdown because it would have been great to have another one up on the other 4x4s, as well as some things we're going to cover here shortly. Well, those downsides didn't seem too harsh, and now we get to talk about the good stuff. So, here are the pros for the Step 3364 Crocodile. Starting off the pros with upside number 1, power, all-wheel drive, and differential locking. The Step has a rather strong engine at its disposal, which is shared with notable off-roaders such as the KRS Bandit. Combine that with the always-on all-wheel drive and differential locking, and we get the performance that you've been currently seeing on screen. For a smaller truck, this is a pretty strong engine, and it's the only off-road class 4x4 with always-on features. Upside number 2, tire options and clearances. While its tires aren't the largest, it does have a nice set of stock wheels that have the best mud rating currently for all terrain tires, but that's not the best part. It shares the TMHS TAYGA tire, which is scaled down to 41 inches. That added bump from the purchasable raised suspension upgrade makes this Crocodile look more and more like a mini TAYGA 6455B. We did mention those trailer issues earlier, which could be a product of overall frame heights and lacking that third axle. But for overall off-road clearance, the Step can keep its frame out of the mud and crawl through some pretty deep stuff. Upside number 3, lengthened 4x4 wheelbase. Something I never thought would be an upside is finally here at number 3. The reason I believe this is an upside is the pure ease of use, especially at faster speeds. Small wheelbase 4x4s tend to be very squirrely driving down roads and light trails at speed. Now, there are ways to mitigate that. However, the Croc doesn't need to do that, and it feels good to drive all around. Also, its wheelbase seems shorter than most 6x6s if you're comparing the lengths from the front and the first rear axle. Overall, it just drives really nice, so that's why I thought this one was an upside. Upside number 4, stability. Given its weight distribution is rather low to the ground, while having the wide stance gives it more similarities to the 6455B, except scaled down and perhaps not as pronounced. The stability, even with a fuel add-on, is rather impressive if you compare it to other 4x4s. It really feels good to be able to trust a 4x4 off-road truck with balance, yet please use caution when using the fuel and repair add-ons. Upside number 5, fuel consumption. Throughout this review, you might have glanced down and noticed that the Croc doesn't use too much fuel except when stressed under load, which is common knowledge. While some might not view consumption as an upside, having a small fuel tank, regardless whether or not it does have reserves, is indeed an upside. Without decent fuel economy, the Crocodile would be severely hamstrung with range and would need frequent support. And finally, closing out our upsides list at upside number 6, exceptional 4x4 performance. Our last upside is one of subjectivity from observation and gameplay. The Step for a 4x4 acts more like a 6x6 as performance goes. From stability to its off-road strength, the Croc simply outclasses its fellow 4x4 off-road trucks. When you can drive a truck with little care, that says something. Drivers can relax and have a good experience in lieu of a premeditated winch deployment for the next balance offsetting moment. Alright, so moving on to my personal ratings for this vehicle. For power, the Step has an engine that powers other workhorse trucks. For terrain navigation, a rating of 4. For an off-road 4x4, this is a pretty good score. The 3364 takes most obstacles rather well, just not with saddled trailers. As we mentioned on our last upside, the Crocodile is easy to use for the most part, with those other upsides as well that we mentioned, making this a pretty safe drive. For aesthetics, I like the older looking hood style and how this has been brought back from other prior games. Stability is rather pleasing in comparison to its peers. It's trustworthy, but it needs attention to its balance in those rough spots. A very small fuel tank, yet a rather decent fuel consumption, merits this one a rating of 2. The Croc really doesn't have much for utility, yet it can support more saddle options than its peers. Being very light in weight with strong power, the step just can't really dig in too much for grip. So in conclusion, the step of 3364 Crocodile outperforms the other off-road class 4x4s for reasons due to balance, which I believe is attributed to the softer suspension and longer wheelbase. Performance-wise, like the TAYGA 6455B, there really aren't many performance inhibiting downsides. However, I did feel let down by the low saddle collision issues when testing. The overall saddle heights and the lack of the third axle are contributors as well. It is nice that it can use the high saddle, but I don't think it's well suited for those large mission trailers. I do believe though that it is doable with the help of the winch. The Crocodile, in my opinion, is best used as a forward operating support vehicle. What I mean by that is it's very trustworthy to get to those really harsh places to help your mission vehicles. I would trust the Crocodile over other 4x4s in its class to support other trucks in the hardest of locations. Due to having shorter frames, those 4x4s are well suited for smaller support roles, and I think the Crocodile is the best of them. In truth, I wasn't too excited for the step upon release, which is why this review is rather late. However, after looking into it, I think the Croc is a good addition to the smaller support vehicles. I really felt like I was using a smaller version of the TAYGA 6455B, and I felt like I could drive it lazily, which is indicative of trust, and gosh, it just felt good. So in closing, the Step 3364 Crocodile is an impressive off-roader that I think players will love to drive. If you can get the saddles to work for you, that is awesome, but I think its strength is in its performance to support the overall mission. Try this one out and let me know what you think. I really hope this review gave you a fresh, new perspective of the Step 3364 Crocodile. Please smash that like button. Definitely share this video with someone who is currently struggling with the game, and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell so you don't miss any future content. Hope you all have a wonderful day, God bless, and stay upright.